Good afternoon. I'm kind of the cleanup batter here. I kind of put it all together for you. What I'm here to talk about are the CPSD's priorities for education reform, and I'm going to start with universal design for learning because that's really the foundation and the catalyst for all the other initiatives, and Dr. Saylor spoke about that. It's what you need as a baseline to make sure that all kids are learning as well as they can, and that you can tell what they are learning. And I'll get into that more as we go along. Sorry. The first thing you want to know about Universal Design for Learning, which I'll refer to as UDL, is that it's already in federal legislation. It was put into the Higher Education Act of 2008. In that context, it was talking about UDL in terms of making sure the faculty could teach their college students in an appropriate way, but it also was a lot about teacher preparation, making sure teachers for the lower grades were being prepared in colleges to be able to teach all students. Now, why should UDL be in ESEA? And I'll tell you that these almost quotes I got from district people out there in the district that have formed a group called the National Research and Implementation Network. And they're very firm that UDL is something that's very important that needs to be in ESEA. And the reason why they say that's the case is that the UDL principles and guidelines, and UDL, I put up the little part of the definition that's a scientifically valid framework for guiding educational practice. That's just the beginning of the definition in federal law. What that framework consists of are principles and guidelines and checkpoints and a whole great deal of information that supports school districts and LEAs in order to provide the professional development, resources, and targeted initiatives that educators need in order to ensure meaningful access to the curriculum and rigor for all learners, not just for those with disabilities. And that piece is really important. It was brought up again by Dr. Saylor that we're talking about all kids here. We're not just talking about kids with disabilities, and that they are part of the whole. In order for inclusion to work, they need to be part of the whole. The initiatives have to be for all kids, or it doesn't work. And the other important piece is that the UDL framework brings together quality research, evidence-based practices in an organized and thoughtful way to benefit educators and students. And what they say, the bottom line is, use money more wisely to benefit more students. Because what happens, they say, is that they have all these different initiatives, and this initiative benefits this group of kids, and this one benefits this group of kids, and this one over here benefits that group of kids. But there's no framework under which to organize all these different initiatives. And unless you have that, you're not using your money wisely. You're buying materials for this group of kids and this group of kids and this group of kids instead of looking at how can I buy one set of materials that really works for everybody, which is more cost effective. So it's good for getting meaningful access to the curriculum, it's good for organizing your initiatives, and most importantly in this day and age, it is good for being more cost effective. Before I go on, I actually should add one piece to my biography that's really important here, or at least I think it is, and that's that I'm a mother of a 19-year-old son who has Down syndrome, who's been successfully included for his whole educational life, and in a lot of ways thanks to the Maryland Coalition for Inclusive Education. And why that's important is that even though I am an attorney, and I knew the law a great deal even when he was born, fact was that without their help, I don't know that I could have gotten him in the door. And he is one of the success stories, one of the kids that's really gotten a great amount of the grade level content. And it was that inclusion in combination with my knowledge of universal design for learning which really made that possible. So what is universal design for learning and where does it come from? It's really based in the neuroscience as it should be. It started with the idea of universal design for architecture and products, and the idea that you want to build something that everybody can use. And CAS, the Center for Applied Special Technology, took that concept and said, well, shouldn't it be the same in education? Shouldn't there be physical access to education, but also cognitive access to learning? And so they looked at the existing neuroscience research, and it was very clear, and you can see, I think, from these, that the more complicated a task gets, the more parts of your brain have to be working at the same time. It can't just be this little piece or that little piece. There needs to be, concerted effort in different parts of your brain. And so UDL and the learning brain, the neuroscience shows that there are these three networks. The recognition network, which is the what of learning, you know, the information that you bring in. The strategic network, which is the how of learning. You know, how do you organize your thoughts? How do you show what you know best? And also the affective network. If you are not engaged and motivated, then you're most likely not going to learn it. So you need to take these three networks of the brain and you need to get them all working at the same time in order to have the optimal learning experience. So what Cass did then is said, okay, well, we need three principles to correlate to these three networks of the brain to make sure they all are working at the same time. And so for the recognition network, we need to make sure that there are multiple means of representation, that information can't just be presented in one way, you know, stand-up lecture, nothing else, because there are going to be many students who are not going to be able to get that information in that way, and they're not going to be given the chance to learn that they deserve. The strategic network needs to have multiple means of action and expression to make sure students are able to learn the way they need to, but also to be able to show what they know in the way that works for them. As was demonstrated in the clips that Dr. Kern showed, if you don't give a kid a communication system, they may well know it, but they can't tell you it, and then what have you learned? And you keep teaching the kid the same thing over and over that they actually already know, and that doesn't help anybody. And then for the effective network, you need multiple means of engagement. You need to think of different ways to engage the students in your class so that they are actually interested in learning and also want to understand why it's important for them to learn it. So then you take these three principles with all their guidelines and there's checkpoints and there's resources and rubrics and, you know, all kinds of modules, and you apply that to the whole curriculum. And this is where sometimes things fall down, because a lot of people think, well, we just need professional development. We'll just do these three principles, teach them to the teachers and tell them, go for it. Well, that's a big problem, because everything can't be on the teacher's shoulders. And this was also alluded to with Dr. Saylor when he's saying there needs to be this relationship between the school district and the school. And so we can't just have professional development and teach teachers this principle and tell them go for it. I mean, that's a piece of it. They need to understand this as well. But we also need, when we're defining the goals, the curricular goals, to write them in a way that they're not barriers to kids. You know, if you're putting a goal that says that you can only do it X way, well, then obviously there are kids that are not going to be able to show they can master that skill. And when it comes to the materials and the resources, the district and the state need to make sure they're providing the kind of resources that will work for all kids and not just rely on teachers to make it work or retrofit it. And as well as with assessments, need to make sure assessments are designed so students can show what they know. And when we do this, when teachers are supported by LEA decisions about UDL and about curriculum, then there's less retrofitting, more time teaching, students are less frustrated and bored, they have more choices, they learn more, and there are fewer behavior issues.